Well, first week of class, obviously you've had some training,
Yeah.
a little bit in the off season. How are you settling in? How are the boys feeling? What's the energy around the pitch and the room?
Yeah, the boys are great. They definitely settled in. Day 2 of classes today, so we'll see what that brings. But yeah, it's year 2, so we're much more comfortable with how we operate training during the school day, and it's obviously different than preseason. Preseason's a lot more fun. They don't have class. But no, we're comfortable with where we are. We have every able-bodied available player fit and ready to go, so we have no injury concerns going into the first week. And so yeah, the guys are excited. You can't really expect anything less in week 1. So we're up for it. They're up for it, and we'll see what happens on Thursday.
Cool. You just mentioned their fitness.
Yeah.
How did you assess where they were coming in from summer in preparation, on their own preparation for this season?
Yeah, they're all super fit. They're all hungry. You can tell they did their job over the summer. But there's nothing that replicates game fitness like games. And so much as they are fit right now, Thursday will pose a different challenge. So it's going to take 3-4 games to get into that game fitness. So we'll expect a lot of rotations early on to make sure the guys kind of push through and don't put themselves in a position to get injured. It's going to be hotter than most early games. So yeah, we'll expect some rotations early on, and we'll figure out what the team is going to be like. But from a fitness standpoint, they're fit, they're healthy, they're strong, they're not injured. So can't really complain about that at all.
4-0 win against Wisconsin Superior exhibition. Just touch briefly about that.
Sure.
How the team, what you took away from that.
Well, what we took away from it was that it was a hard game. It wasn't a standard 4-0 win. We scored late, and they tested us. They tested like we'll see in the GLIAC. So it was a great day for us to deal with those issues that we're going to find here in a couple days. We got a lot of new players into the match, so they played college soccer for the first time. It was a long day trip, so we got to work on our on the road operation. So it was a really successful day, even though it wasn't an easy day. And they really challenged us. So our guys kind of found a way and were able to get some late goals and showed that they have fight and spirit. And we're going to need that. You can't always play great soccer. It's not always going to be a good day for us on the ball. So we have to be willing to do the dirty work and defend and fight and battle for second balls and the stuff that's not the most fun. But that's the reality of GLIAC soccer. So if we can do that, then we should be in every single game.
You touched briefly earlier about regular season coming up this weekend. Talk to me a little bit about the opponents you'll be facing in Northwood and Quincy.
Yeah, they're both good opponents, 2 different leagues. You get Northwood out of the GMAC, former GLIAC member. They're very difficult. They have basically the same team back from last year. They're going to be very strong, powerful, direct, a lot of service into the box. So we're going to have to be up for it physically from day one. And then Quincy, they're in the GVL-VC. We tied them 2-2 last year, so that's going to be another fight. It's a Sunday game. Both teams play on Thursday, so at that point it's who's going to be able to recover the best and be able to perform on Sunday. So we have the advantage that we're at home and they're traveling, but that doesn't really change much. Once the whistle goes, everybody, it's a fair game. And so our guys got to be up for 2 really physical, tough battles, and we're not going to have it perfect game 1. There's no way you can ask that we're going to be playing at our #1 top level. We're going to get there, so we have to be willing to fight and do these other things that you don't honestly want to do. And that's how soccer goes. You have to be able to defend and get up for second balls and restarts, as well as being good on the ball. And so we've been training that, and we're going to train that again today. It's a little bit rainy, so we're gonna get out on the pitch and have these guys work and get ready for Thursday.
You mentioned that game 1 won't be perfect. What's the #1 focal point for you as a coach going into game 1?
Scoring goals. Let's score goals. Last year we really struggled to finish our chances, and we kept teams in the game. So for us, it's scoring goals, finishing our chances, dictating the tempo of the game, managing the game, and not getting into issues where we're now conceding poor goals against the run of play and now having to come from behind. So us, it's scoring goals, plain and simple.
And Coach, I know you talked about, as the week approaches and as game 1 approaches, the intensity level changes.
For sure.
You can't really feel it until you're playing games. So is practice at an even higher level than it has been, and will it be higher this week?
I would say so. Based on yesterday, yeah, absolutely. They're up for it, and sometimes you have to control their emotions a little bit. There will absolutely be some nerves. There's no doubt about it. But that's part of the game, and you have to push through that. So our guys are battle tested. They've been through it before, and we'll have to help the new players along. But yeah, there's no warm up time. It's straight to it. We have to win our non-conference games to give us an opportunity to get a bid. And so, what perfect opportunity at home on Thursday.
Talk to me a little bit about the incoming freshman class.
Sure.
What you expect from them, maybe impact right away, holes they may have filled that you like.
Yeah, like we talked about in the preview, I think all of them have filled some massive holes for us. You can go from goalkeeper all the way up to forward. So with Bryce and Flo and goal, that's massive for us. We needed to fill that position from last year. We really didn't have a striker last year, so Fernando's done a great job, as well as Teddy coming in and showing that they can play the 9 and score goals like we just talked about. But all the rest of them, the defenders, the central midfielders, the wingers, they've all been able to show that they can play and make big impacts. So I expect all of them to play and make impacts, and the team has welcomed them in. It hasn't been as if they're the new players. We've been working on our culture since they were announced as the incoming class. So there really hasn't been this long introduction time. They're part of the team, and they're going to make a huge impact. So we'll see who starts on Thursday, but you can bet that 3 or 4 of those newcomers are going to be on the pitch.
Well, Coach, first week of classes. What's the energy like in the locker room in preparation up to season opening in this weekend?
Team's in good spirits. We scrimmaged at Michigan Tech on Saturday. It went really well. I think the anxiousness of season, like starting and being here, is very real. But ultimately, like you kind of touched on, they are student athletes, and so we took Sunday off so they could walk around and see where all their classes are for the freshmen and just start to get acclimated, because balancing the stresses of school and your sport are very important, and having kind of a healthy relationship with the two is really important. And so we do our best to prioritize academics for them, but ultimately I think they're really excited to open our season at home on Thursday and kind of get the season going.
You touched briefly on scrimmages with Tech and then the green and gold scrimmage you had. What did you assess about those two previews of game speed?
Yeah, it's so fascinating. This time of year when you're first starting, it's amazing how quickly film becomes obsolete, because things are changing at lightning speed, right? So we played that match on Mackinac Island, which feels like a month ago, right? But it was just over a week ago, and I told the team, I was like, I will never look at that film again. Right, and then you got that green and gold scrimmage, which was great, and we learned a lot, and we got a lot of great information from it, but that film is now obsolete because we have the film from the Tech scrimmage where we're changing at lightning speed and players are evolving and getting better. And so it's, just trying to keep up with the film and making sure they're watching it right away so that they can learn from it. And then because what coaches do is we watch that film, we write the next practice based on what we saw in that film, and then you hope that they're getting better, right? And then you take the film for the next day, and the next day, and the next day. But ultimately what I learned from it, I learned that we're capable of being really good. And, we're going to need some freshmen to step up and get the job done. I think we have a couple that can do that. And if we can kind of get it together, I think we could be a really solid team.
Big weekend this weekend. Obviously the UP Open. Talk to me about the team preparation, how you go about prepping for a tournament like this, especially Friday with 2 big opponents in the same day. Just give me the rundown on what you look forward to in preparation for this weekend.
Yeah, this is always the most interesting week of the season just because nobody has film on anybody, right? So nobody knows who our freshmen are, right? Maybe they watch this and say, he's talking about freshmen, but who are the ones that are going to be impactful? And you can maybe look at the class and what they've done in their high school careers and say, maybe this person. But ultimately, nobody really knows. And I think that's a really good thing, We played Crookston on Thursday night, and, we've played them, I think, at least 2 or 3 of the last 4 years. And so we know a little bit about their program. But like you said, Friday is going to be a big test. Hillsdale, who I believe was in the Sweet 16 last year, and then you have Concordia, who was the national runner-up. Big weekend, big day. But ultimately, there's just another test to see where we're at, a measuring stick. Last year, when I scheduled our opponents, I scheduled to win. It's kind of a fluff schedule, and we went 7-1. We should have gone 8-0. This year is the opposite. We're playing all tough opponents, and so and meaningful opponents, right? Hillsdale and Northwood are both in a region. Those matches matter for the NCAA tournament. But we did that by design with the group we have and what they're capable of. I think we have a really good shot, and if you're going to play teams like that, you want to play them at home. And so we get to play them at home in front of our crowd, and we're hopeful that it's going to be full and loud and exciting like it always is. And yeah, who knows? I don't know. I'm excited about those opponents. I don't want to play teams that you roll the balls out and hope you win because you should on paper. I want to play opponents that are going to challenge us and make us better.
Do you think the fact that these are tougher opponents on paper is an advantage to this team, especially with the mentality going in?
Yeah. There's no you can't fake it, right? You got to be ready to go. Like, you have to do the preparation to be ready for that first serve, because if you go behind early in any match against an opponent like those two that I mentioned, and even I would throw Northwood in that mix as well, you're gonna have a really tough time fighting back. And so a lot of what our gym has been about the last couple of days has been starting on time, being ready to go at the beginning, and then finishing matches, right? That was one thing in the green and gold that was evident, was we don't finish. We'll get to 22, 23, 24, but that 25 hump is really hard to get to. And you just cannot give oxygen to other teams late in sets, and so we have to learn how to finish, and so we're designing drills with that in mind. But I think they have a great mentality, you know, and we talk a lot about, you know, when you're a part of this program, you're competing and preparing to win championships, right? If you're competing and preparing to win championships, you want to play teams that have done that. And there's no better barometer than Concordia St. Paul, who has won, I don't know, 7 or 8 national championships. They were in the national championship last year. They're going to push us to the brink, and we're looking forward to that challenge.
All right, Coach, school's back in session. You've settled in a little bit. What's the vibe? What's the atmosphere like amongst the student athletes, amongst the coaching staff heading into week 1?
Yeah, feel like we've had a great last week of practice. Kind of odd, you go into kind of the weekend. We had an off day, and I think sometimes in an off day you come back and you just get out of your routine. And I think, you know, you need the rest. You need to be able to recover, and yet you got to come back and got to be able to play fast, practice fast again. And you know, guys just need to get into that routine and that mode. I think we talked about it as a staff, and there's a few different factors that play into you know, just going into week 1. You've got school starting, you've got a whole new routine. We're not in camp mode anymore. You shift from morning practices to afternoon practices. You got the pressure just inherently of week 1 and 18 to 23-year-olds trying to manage emotions of the excitement and the anxiety. And you know, our job as coaches is to just make sure we keep them calm, keep them confident, keep them poised, and we've been talking about that as a team. So a lot of excitement, a lot of buzz, and yet, of course, week 1 always comes along with you know, it's the biggest game of the year because we haven't played in a year, and so you know, we just got to control that emotion and make sure we're doing what we're supposed to do to execute.
You talked about the guys a little bit. What are you seeing from them coming from summer and now into preseason and the season in terms of their fitness and preparedness for this upcoming season?
Yep. I don't think we were in extremely great shape when we first showed up to camp as a full team. Now, I think, you know, probably half the guys, 65% of the guys were really good. And yet, I think some of them were in for a rude awakening. And I think from week 1 to week 2 to week 3 and now, you know, getting into game week, we're the best we've been in. And I really like where our team's at. I think we've learned how to practice. We fly around at practice, we get a lot of reps, and it's a very intense atmosphere, and we try to just make sure that guys can handle that. And you know, we will condition when it calls for it. We've got a plan to just make sure that we're sharp with that, but a lot of it is the way we practice gets us into natural football playing condition, and so we're hoping that that can pay off for us.
Coach, you open on the road, and that's an entirely different thing than opening at home. What difficulties, if there are any, that you see, or things that you're going to have to make sure your guys know going into that game?
I think naturally you're into a different environment. You're in a different comfort zone, right? I mean, we've been out on the outdoor Superior Fields here for, you know, the last 3 weeks, and that's just looking at the lake. That's just what we've known. You know, looking at the evergreens, that's what we've known. And so you've got to be able to take your operation and now go into a stadium where black and maroon and, you know, gold are going to be what you're seeing now, right? And the colors of a different opponent, right? And we talk about that as a team. You know, you cannot adjust your mentality and what we've trained and what we've done just because an opponent wears a different color jersey and just because there are fans in the stands, and, you know, which it's going to be a great game day atmosphere and environment, I think, and we should relish that. We should be able to be inspired by that, but we've got to just stay true to who we are and make sure that we remember everything that we've trained up to this point and everything that we stand for, and just make sure that we play that way.
Talk to me a little bit about your upcoming opponent. What do you see from them? What are you
Mhm.
preparing for?
I think it's always tough first game. You don't necessarily have recent game film to watch per se, right? You know a little bit about what they've done from last year. You know, it's just a guessing game a little bit, and I think that's why it's so important to stay true to who you are and do what you do well and master what you're supposed to do. I think the team that makes the fewest mistakes in the first game and doesn't beat themselves is usually the one that has a chance to win. And I think, you know, if we can just believe in what we do in all three phases of the game and make sure we perform with great fundamentals, we're going to be right there. We're going to compete, and we're going to bring energy, and we're going to be able to at least feel good about what we're going to be able to do on Thursday night.
All right, Coach. First week of school. What's the energy like around the locker room, around the pitch with the girls?
Pretty good. You know, I think everyone's excited not only to get on the field, but to get back into the swing of things. You know, first week of school brings a really fun and really a goofy kind of energy, you know, and so it's good to see that side of the players, and it's always a great reminder that, you know, they're students and they have other stressors and they have other things going on in their life. And so, yeah, I think they're really excited not only for the games, but just to get back into the routine and, you know, kind of getting back to the classroom and work towards that degree.
And just before first day of school, you had scrimmages, green and golds. Talk to me a little bit what you took away from that in terms of their preparation and where they're at the start of the season.
Well, you know, our only other benchmark was Northwood, you know, and to go from, you know, our performance at Northwood to that, it's pretty exciting. So I thought the energy and the execution was at a much higher rate from the green and gold than it was at Northwood. I mean, I don't have many positives to say about the Northwood game. So I'll just leave that at that, and I think what we're doing is we're turning the page and we're looking towards the future and just trying to prepare for this weekend. Overall, really exciting and fun time, and it was really cool to see how energetic and how much the green and gold scrimmage has evolved over the last couple of years into something really competitive and something that the players really look forward to each and every year.
Coming up this weekend, two non-conference teams. They both finished relatively similarly in the conference. What are you looking for in preparation? What are you expecting out of this weekend?
You know, first weekend, no matter who you're playing, everybody still has belief. Everyone still has hope. You know what I mean? Nobody's getting ready to say, hey, our season's over, and no one's getting ready to lay down. So we fully anticipate really two tough matches. And when you look at the last couple of years, you know, at St. Cloud in particular last year, it was tough. I mean, we were fortunate in some moments to get out of there with a win, and I think if I'm them, I'm not forgetting that moment, and I think they're going to be coming in with a significant chip on their shoulder, and they're going to have something to prove. But even before we get too far ahead of ourselves, we got to take care of business at Duluth. I mean, with Duluth, and I mean they're extremely well coached. They're returning some of their best players, and so we fully anticipate them to be ready for the challenge. You know, I think we're 5-16 all time against Duluth, so we want to keep edging that a little bit closer in our favor. But the reality is they're a quality opponent, and so if we're not able to execute on all phases of the game, you know, it can be very much a struggle for us. So we just got to be prepared in a lot of areas and continue to make improvements this weekend.
Well, Coach, it's the beginning of the season, so there's pressure, and there's always pressure. But to open at home, does that give a little bit of relief to know that, hey, you're going to be playing on your turf and you're familiar with it, and it's going to be in front of your home fans and things like that?
Yeah, I mean, I believe so. I think from, you know, a player standpoint especially, you know, if you would ask me last year and we were able to get 2 wins on the road and then go back home, I would say, hey, I prefer that, you know. So it kind of just depends on how you do on the road. But I always tell our players if you take care of the ones at home, the road has a little bit less pressure, all right? And if you're able to do that, you don't feel like you have to absolutely always get a result on the road. And I think that's important when you're able to win the game that you should at home, then the road feels a little bit, you know, less pressure. I think that's important that, you know, we're able to take care of the ones this weekend. because the next weekend is a challenging road trip, and it's a far road trip, and it's one that we've done in other places for that distance, but anytime you go that far, you know, it comes with its own challenges, its own distractions, and the road is where character is built. And so, you know, even before we can get too far into that, we're definitely just hoping to take care of the ones at home first, and hopefully build some confidence heading into the following weekend with Lewis and Springfield.
Coach, how would you describe this team's identity?
It's a really good question. I think we're still trying to figure that out. I think it's early, and with some of the different pieces that we've had to incorporate, we're still trying to figure out who we are as a team. And I think this weekend will be really telling about which direction that we can head to, and how we handle some adversity, and how we're able to manage some emotions, and are we able to incorporate and implement some of the things that we've been working on in practice. You know, each and every year is a little bit different, and every time a coach tries to plan out your starting 11 in the spring, things change, and that's no different from each and every year. And so what we're trying to do is figure out the best system, the best brand of soccer for this group, and to see what moments they can be successful in, and just to identify some of our weaknesses, and then hopefully apply that before conference comes around. Good. Awesome.
Thank you.
Cool.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.